The area of the Earth is approximately 510 million square kilometers, and more than two-thirds of its surface is covered by water. Despite this, most seas and oceans remain unexplored. Scientific research shows that we know more about the mysteries of the lunar surface than about the waters of the world ocean. There is a multitude of evidence regarding the appearance of unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, in the skies, but there is just as much concerning the so-called unidentified submerged objects, USOs, in the ocean. USOs are UFOs that appear on the surface of the water or beneath it. In fact, UFOs and USOs are the same. A UFO becomes a USO when it submerges into the water. Investigating this elusive class of UFOs opens new horizons. It would be beneficial if sailors shared their observations of these devices. Constructing an underwater vessel with supersonic speed is quite possible, and there are reports that the lost Atlantis may be a secret base for USOs. The legend of Atlantis is based on the belief that such a base exists even today. Records from the ship's log of Christopher Columbus, made in 1492, indicate that sailors saw unidentified objects submerging and surfacing in the darkness. One of the most famous cases is the incident near the coast of Nova Scotia in Canada. On the night of October 4, 1967, 67 UFOs hovered over Shag Harbor, suddenly tilted at 45 degrees, and submerged, causing a strong splash and the sound of an explosion. Researchers assure that deep-water UFOs continue to traverse the unexplored waters of the planet. The question arises, did UFOs really visit Earth? Or perhaps they are still here, in the sea. The Santa Catalina Channel, a section of the Pacific Ocean that is 40 kilometers wide, separates Los Angeles from Santa Catalina Island. According to scientists, in some places the depth of this channel conceals numerous mysteries. Leland Hansen, who captured a UFO from a helicopter over the island, claims that it is not a model but a genuine object. Recent reports of unidentified submerged objects that appear above the channel and then dive back down have alarmed local residents and scientists. This is an area of active UFO activity. One witness claims, "I saw between 200 and 300 UFOs over the mountains, over the water. Truly a hotspot." Preston Dennett, the author of the book UFOs Over California, has been studying USO activity in this area for nearly 20 years. He recalls that on the 14th of June 1992, a wave of UFOs rolled over the Santa Monica mountain range, and witnesses counted more than 200 objects. These objects were rising from the water, unlike the usual UFOs that typically flew in the sky like falling stars. That evening, on the 14th of June 1992, at 22 hours 24 minutes, almost 2 minutes of the waters of the Pacific Ocean were illuminated by the light of hundreds of disks that synchronously emerged from the water. As in other reports of UAPs, these craft appeared in complete silence, hovering over the water before shooting off into space. Witnesses inundated the local police with calls all the way to Malibu. The recording of the authentic conversation with the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station that day goes as follows. "Have you received any strange reports?" "About what?" "About a strange glow." "Glow?" "Yes." "What exactly did you see?" "I'm afraid to say." "What if you think I'm crazy? We saw a very bright light in the sky." "Well, we didn't hear any helicopter noise." "I swear, I've never felt such fear in my life." Dene also reports that a message was received by the Long Beach Coast Guard, which refused to conduct an investigation. The phenomenon of 1992 was already the second in Los Angeles in 3 years. On a foggy morning on the 7th of February 1989, divers, shipborne sonar operators, and people on the shore noticed a long, dark, unidentified object on the surface of the ocean. It remained motionless for 1.5 minutes, then released a dozen smaller, fast-moving objects. Another minute later, the craft again submerged, and the last sonar signal was recorded further south in the Santa Catalina Channel. After that, everything disappeared. Near the coast of Marina del Rey, small unidentified underwater objects were observed, which occasionally released smaller craft, about 5 meters in diameter. These objects surfaced in the ocean and then submerged again. If the incident in 1947 in Roswell sparked global interest in flying saucers, then the events off the coast of Los Angeles became a starting point for research into the possibilities and threats associated with so-called unidentified underwater objects. The world's oceans cover 70% of the planet, and many mysteries lie hidden in their depths. There is a possibility that an entire community of intelligent beings resides deep underwater, where they are undisturbed. Underwater UFOs provoke interest because they know things about our planet that we do not. A unique characteristic of UAPs is their ability to multiply and share. One of these cases was named the Gulf Nueva incident. On the 8th of February 1960, an alert was declared on the Argentine Navy. Sailors noticed two unidentified submarines and assumed that these were American objects. The sonar detected objects that suddenly released several flying saucers. The sonar recorded them at a distance of 173,138 yards. Two gigantic submarines, spotted by the Argentine Navy, unexpectedly split into 6 underwater objects. The Argentines were unable to capture or destroy them as they dissolved in the blink of an eye. This case attracted the attention of even the highest Soviet leadership. The then leader of the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, was so intrigued by the incident that he sent his attaché to Buenos Aires to investigate the circumstances. Some scientists claimed that these were torpedoes launched from the submarines, but others objected, pointing out that in 1960, submarines could not simultaneously launch 6 or more torpedoes. Researcher NPO Ivan Sanderson, in his book Invisible Residents, published in the 70s, first analyzed the phenomenon of NPO. He mentions another astonishing ability of NPO. In March 1963, 150 kilometers from Puerto Rico, American submarine exercises were taking place. Suddenly, one of the submarines veered off its course upon noticing an unidentified object moving at a speed of 150 knots. The submariners were astonished by the depth at which it was located. Judging by the acoustic signals, the object, which had one propeller, was spotted at a depth of 6,100 meters, although the maximum diving depth of submarines did not exceed 2,000 meters. This meant that the object surpassed the technical capabilities of submarines both then and now. For almost 4 days, the object was tracked by the carrier group. The vessel moved at an incredible speed, but occasionally stopped, allowing the sailors to observe. This incident was promptly reported to the fleet headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia. However, no official conclusion regarding the events of that day ever followed. After midnight, the sailors lost track of the objects, and the sonar could no longer detect anything. Everyone remained puzzled about what could move at such speed. There were many reports of NPO surfacing and submerging, but no technical data existed. In the sky, people saw flying saucers, while underwater, they were only noticed by the Navy, which did not share its findings. The United States Navy began to unveil the mysteries of flying saucers by launching a huge probe from the deck of the military ship Norton Sound for further study of the elusive cosmic rays in the Pacific Ocean. However, the mystery of the so-called flying saucers was soon clarified. These monsters, reaching 30 meters in diameter at an altitude of 30 kilometers, were mistaken for flying saucers. According to experts, giant objects at high altitudes appear flat, like plates. The mystery was revealed, but reports continued to come in from all corners of the world. Another extraordinary event, covered by the world press, occurred on the 11th of November, 1972. A fast-moving object resembling a submarine was detected by sonar in the Sognefjord, off the western coast of Norway. Norwegian military sailors hunted for it for 2 weeks. A group of aircraft carriers equipped with sub-Hunter helicopters was aimed at capturing this object. On the 20th of November 1972, the first visual contact was made. The unidentified underwater object appeared as a massive silent craft in the shape of a cigar. The military ship immediately began firing at it with its guns and launching torpedoes. The object was clearly visible on the surface from the ship's deck, but soon submerged. Then it was attacked with depth charges. Although by all parameters it looked like a submarine, no sonar could identify it as such. After 2 weeks of observation, the command decided to set a trap by blocking the exit from the fjord. They barricaded the fjord so that no one could escape. However, After 14 to 15 days, the craft disappeared, which meant that the sailors had been observing not a submarine, but an unidentified underwater object. The story shifts to the year 1492, when Christopher Columbus and his crew allegedly witnessed an unidentified underwater object emerging from the Atlantic Ocean. On the 11th of October, at 10 in the evening, on a quiet and clear night, Columbus and his crew were slowly making their way across the vastness of the Atlantic through the Bermuda Triangle. Beneath them lay a depth of almost 6.5 kilometers. Suddenly, an unearthly light spread across the ocean floor. On board the ship Santa Maria, a sailor by the name of Gutera noticed an object rising from the water. It had the shape of a disc, and with a bright flash of light, something suddenly burst from the depths into the sky, terrifying the 120 people on board the 3 ships of the Spanish fleet to death. In 5 hours, they were to open a new world. Christopher Columbus kept a ship's log in which the described event can be interpreted as a UFO phenomenon. The sailors allegedly saw a flickering light surfacing and then diving back underwater. It could not have been the fire of a campfire, as land was not yet visible on the horizon. Perhaps the incident with San Pian became just a legend. The original text of Columbus's ship's log was first provided to the History Channel by the Fordham University Archive, where a rare handwritten copy is stored. The phenomenon of October 11, 1492, was not an isolated incident. Throughout 2 months of sailing, the ship's log noted regularly recurring oddities: inexplicable silhouettes in the sky, light pouring from the sea. Entries from September 10, 1492, indicate that the crew seemed to have seen a dove and a water wagtail, although these birds never fly further than 25 miles from land. Entries from September 11th mention a piece of a mast from a vessel displacing 120 tons, but it could not be retrieved. Entries from September 17th and 20th testify that stars or other unknown celestial bodies were moving in the sky. One star broke free and flew somewhere, while the rays remained in place. The famous entry from October 11th describes how the admiral noticed a light and called Pedro Gutierrez to look in that direction. Pedro also saw this light, which, like a candle, dove into the water. Is it possible that the strange events marking the most famous voyage in history were the result of extraterrestrial vessels observing Columbus's fleet? Some believe that the interpretation of Columbus's ship's log does not reveal the whole truth. If Christopher Columbus truly saw a strange object that emerged from the water, circled his ship, and then soared into the sky, would he have told anyone about it? Perhaps he would have been locked in the hold immediately, like Malyshanov. One of the oldest mentions of unidentified underwater objects dates back to 339 years before our era. Alexander the Great, upon seeing what he called a shining shield over the Gakhara River in India, dedicated the last years of his life to tracking down extraterrestrial vessels, using an underwater bell, which is considered the world's first submarine. Many researchers believe that Alexander's underwater journeys had a more grandiose purpose: the quest to conquer the slipping kingdom known as Atlantis. The first mention of Atlantis appears in the philosophical dialogues of Plato, specifically in Timaeus and Critias. According to legend, the gods, concerned about the behavior of the inhabitants, decided to destroy Atlantis. In just one night and one day, it was destroyed by an earthquake and sank to the bottom of the ocean. To this day, scholars express hypotheses that Atlantis could have been a base for unidentified underwater objects. The legend of Atlantis is likely based on lost information about a secret underwater civilization, presumably located in the Mediterranean Sea, a convenient observation point for human civilization and maritime routes from Asia Minor, Rome, and Athens. The Mediterranean Sea was the cradle of ancient culture, and Phoenician merchants sailed between the Near East and Greece. If there existed some community of aliens or indigenous inhabitants of Earth that intended to gift humanity a myth, it could very well have been based on an underwater object in this region. Although it is unclear whether Plato specifically meant unidentified underwater objects, many believe that Atlantis indeed existed and is somewhere in the Atlantic, buried beneath layers of water. However, the first report of unidentified objects in the ocean does not originate from ancient Athens. Scholars believe that the ancient Egyptians captured them in their drawings. In the temple of the ancient Egyptian city of Abydos, a submarine was depicted, and another drawing remarkably resembles a helicopter. The question remains, how could the ancient Egyptians have known about such devices? One of the early European phenomena dates back to the 11th century in England. On the website of researcher Carl Feint, one can find data about a case from the year 1060, when rural residents noticed a bright light in the sky. At first it descended to the ground, illuminating the surroundings, and then it rose again, glided over the sea, and submerged. Carl Feint, who has been investigating the phenomenon of unidentified underwater objects for nearly 10 years, maintains an archive of 900 modern and historical phenomena on his website, waterufo.net. According to his information, one of the first cases in the 20th century was detailed in the Philadelphia Inquirer on the 1st of August, 1904. The British cargo ship Magician, heading to Philadelphia, was, according to the newspaper, enveloped in a strange cloud of metallic vapor that glowed like phosphorus. However, as Feint discovered, the incident turned out to be much more impressive than what was written in the newspaper. According to the captain and the crew, a strange object appeared on the surface of the ocean, which was not a meteorite but something that glided across the water. When the object got very close, the captain tried to distract the crew to prevent panic. However, being inside a cloud, the ship could not move. Furthermore, the Inquirer reports that during the incident, the compass needle on board spun at the speed of an electric motor, and the sailors could not take their eyes off the magnetized decks. The newspaper quotes the captain, who claims that the entire crew can vouch for the truthfulness of this information. The most astonishing and incredible case, according to scientists, was the incident of 1967 in Canada. Shag Harbor is perhaps the most significant of documented phenomena of unidentified submerged objects. A flying object swam underwater from one point to another, and then a second one joined it. This year we will visit Shag Harbor on the 38th anniversary of this unprecedented event. On the 4th of October 1967, somewhere around 20 minutes to 1 in the evening, a light appeared on the water right next to me. The night of the 4th of October 1967 entered history as the Night of Annalore, and the incident at Shag Harbor became a vivid symbol of the events of that evening. Crystals and Don Ledger, who have dedicated the last few decades to investigating the incident, note that in those years all Canadian newspapers actively reported on it, but over time it somehow faded from memory. The book by Stiles and Ledger, The Dark Object, has once again drawn attention to this episode, shedding new light on the events of that night and the following weeks. The incident at Shag Harbor stood out among other UFO phenomena, as it was here that an object descended from the sky and plunged into the water, causing a tremendous noise and splash. Interestingly, no one reported a UFO. Calls to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police may have been made, but the callers only spoke of a light that could have come from a plane that had crashed into the sea. Everyone was concerned about rescuing people, and no one thought about a UFO. One of the eyewitnesses recalls, "Now I am not at all surprised by what I saw in the sky, as that night people across Nova Scotia were noticing UFOs." He points to the spot where a crowd gathered 38 years ago to find out what had happened. Every year on this day, Ledger and Stiles come to Shag Harbor and meet with Norm Smith, the third of the remaining living witnesses. "Do you see that little island over there? Right there is where it all happened. That is where we saw the light in the water," he says, pointing to the site of the incident. "We three stood on the lawn and watched the lights. Suddenly they began to move and seemed to be coming right at us. We thought that a plane was crashing. In a hurry, they jumped into their uncle's car and raced to the spot where Irish moss was growing. When we arrived, there were already about 10 to 12 people there. We watched the lights for 2 or 3 minutes, then they disappeared." From midnight on the 4th of October until 3 o'clock in the morning, officers of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, observing the incident from the shoreline, searched the surface of the water in boats, assisted by local fishermen, including Norm Smith. On Friday, the 6th of October, around noon, divers from Halifax arrived and conducted searches throughout the weekend. On Monday in Ottawa, the search was concluded with an official statement declaring that it was an unidentified flying object. The government report stated that the object was moving from south to north along the coast of Nova Scotia, hovered in one spot, and then, at approximately 23:20, plunged into the water at a 45-degree angle, 300 meters from the shore. Right there, just behind me, near Bomb Portage Island, we saw the lights, the witness adds. When the officers of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived at the shore, along which the old Highway No. 3 runs, the object was still moving across the water's surface, leaving a trail of dense yellow foam behind it. The following week, the story took on even more mysterious features when the incident was reported on the front page of all Canadian newspapers. As Ledger and Stiles note in their book, just a few days before the official announcement that this case pertained to UFO phenomena, a second craft entered the waters of Nova Scotia to join the first. Then, at a speed of approximately 7,000 kilometers per hour, it crossed northern New Brunswick, flew over the Bay of Fundy, and plunged into the water. Authorities already knew that the object was no longer present, as it had traveled underwater and settled on the bottom, where it remained for almost a week. Later, it moved to the Bay of Maine with the help of a second craft, which apparently assisted it in repairs. After that, both objects surfaced from the water and flew over the Bay of Maine. Interestingly, people also witnessed a second appearance. Two types of lights, yellow and orange, emerged from the water and flew away, leaving behind many questions. The events that occurred on the 4th of October 1967 continue to spark debate, and investigations are ongoing. There are numerous documents supporting the version of a UFO crash in Shag Harbor. According to the preliminary investigation, the object was neither a rocket, nor a crashed airplane, nor any known apparatus. One of the witnesses from that time shares his memories. Back then, over 30 years ago, I did not know what it was, whether it was a UFO or not, but no one will convince me that there was nothing there because there was. Next in the program is the first video footage, possibly capturing the emergence of an unidentified underwater object from Lake Laguna, Cartagena, in Puerto Rico. The objects moved towards the lake, attracting the attention of scientists. Researchers from the University of California assert that the supersonic speed of deep-water UFOs is not only scientifically possible but also quite likely. The region around Puerto Rico has a rich history of UFO sightings, being at the center of discussions as it represents the southern end of the mysterious Bermuda Triangle. Puerto Rico is considered a hot spot for UFOs, where their activities fit into the overall pattern of sightings. Members of the Puerto Rican UFO group, Project Argus, agreed to show the attractions related to UFOs. The authorities of Cartagena keep news about UFOs secret, although since 1930 hundreds of unidentified flying objects have been observed along the shores and waters of Lake Cartagena. On October 8, 2002, around 9 in the evening, a Puerto Rican police officer and a member of Project Argus witnessed a glowing red UFO shooting out of the waters of Lake Laguna, Cartagena at an unimaginable speed, then stopping and hovering above the water. He recalls, "I saw the object hovering over Lake Laguna, Cartagena." Military personnel also witnessed the incident. The object flew away, soon returning from the direction of Monte Indio and hovering over the lake before diving back into the water. Another participant of Project Argus, in 2004, was able to capture the same object on video. He recounts, "I filmed on November 20th, 2004, in close proximity to Lake Laguna, Cartagena. This was the first video material showing a UFO over the mysterious lake. A brightly lit aircraft emerged from the water and hovered over the lake for almost a minute before flying away." In the mid-1990s, attempts were made to debunk UFO activity, despite hundreds of eyewitnesses observing lights appearing and disappearing in the lake. These sightings were recorded throughout Puerto Rico, especially in places like Lake Laguna, Cartagena, and Highway 303. The Lajos area, through which Highway 303 passes, also became an important point of UFO and UAP activity. There are likely unresolved questions remaining after the crash in 1997 on Monte Indio. On the 5th of May 1997, a UFO crashed here, leaving behind an extensive area scorched at the mountain's peak. That night, federal agents arrived and found something. Who knows? Perhaps it was a UFO. After the incident in 1997, local authorities began to take reports of UFOs and UAPs more seriously. The mayor of the city of Lajes, in a recent speech, referred to Highway 303 as UAP Highway, emphasizing its significance. However, the current events related to UAPs are generating even greater interest among experts. Over the hills of Lajes, a mysterious government balloon frequently rises, allegedly monitoring movement and predicting the weather. However, UAP enthusiasts are convinced that it serves a hidden mission, tracking and recording UAP activity. In the archives, there is a government document regarding a secret investigation into the appearance of UAPs underwater, which claims that they do not pose a threat to humans. The number of reports of unidentified underwater objects on this small island suggests that deep waters beneath the southern tip of the Bermuda Triangle conceal not only UAPs. Experts from around the world believe that these objects may be a cover for a main UAP base located somewhere between La Baguera and Cabo Rojo. This base is situated at great depth and extends to the lagoon lake of Cartagena. Most likely, UAPs surface in one location and submerge in another, as they have underwater bases. However, the question arises, can all these events be explained solely by local mysticism and the influence of the Bermuda Triangle? Most locals, while discussing Chupacabra and the Bermuda Triangle, do not actually believe in such nonsense. Or is there something more behind all of this? The phenomenon of UAPs in Puerto Rico is an undeniable fact, as evidenced by the vast number of eyewitnesses. One of them claims, "You cannot not believe them. I think the UAP phenomenon is real. Here in Puerto Rico, hundreds of cases have been recorded." And this is reality. Further in the program, photographs of an object, possibly a UAP, leaving the waters of Gulf Breeze in Florida are examined. It is believed that unidentified underwater objects move through seas and oceans in ways that contradict all laws of modern physics. Researchers are astonished by their ability to descend to incredible depths without damage, pass through ice, and achieve supersonic speeds underwater. Their devices likely move underwater due to their impermeability, just as they are impermeable to gamma rays of cosmic radiation and all other obstacles in outer space. If the gathered information is to be believed, we are dealing with highly advanced technology. They fly here, and before you know it, they are already underwater. Water is not an obstacle for them. They easily transition from one medium to another. At the end of 1969, during regular exercises near Antarctica, American military sailors on the vessel Calcaterra spotted an unidentified underwater object of extraordinary power. Ivan Sanderson, in the magazine Argosy, recounts how somewhere in the Arctic, the object passed through the ice and took off, literally breaking through the ice thickness. A huge object, resembling a submarine and measuring at least 30 meters in length, burst forth from the ice-bound ocean at an incredible speed, slicing through the dense ice. This is just one of many similar cases reported by sailors around the world. One witness recalls an incident near Leningrad in winter when a UFO broke through the ice of a lake. They melt the ice, a meteorite would shatter it into pieces while the UFO makes a clean hole. Eyewitnesses also describe water jets beneath the UFOs when they emerge from the water. Ed Walters, a resident of Gulf Breeze, captured a photograph on July 7, 1988, showing a UFO above a water jet in the shape of a tornado. He was standing and looking north when he noticed the water suddenly frothing, and immediately an object emerged dragging a column of water behind it. This is visible in the photograph. Such testimonies have led researchers to consider that UFOs may use water as fuel. Some believe that water plays a role in the melting process. There are numerous cases where something resembling water tanks has been seen on the underside of UFOs. This could mean that their devices operate on water. Perhaps they use water as fuel, and it is no coincidence that many have seen objects hovering over water as if drawing it in. This means they need to drink in order to continue their journey. Modern science has put forward many hypotheses regarding the extraordinarily efficient ways UFOs move underwater. Researchers propose various suggestions, ranging from powerful jet systems to anti-friction bubbles enveloping the objects. In other words, their engines are not what we imagine them to be. Some researchers suggest that unidentified underwater objects may use magnetic force generators to create a magnetic field around themselves. This allows them to repel natural terrestrial magnetism, increase and decrease speed, gain altitude, descend, and even float on water. In an environment with high electrical conductivity, it is possible to control parameters such as braking, current, speed, and descent. This opens up possibilities for solving all problems of high-speed movement underwater. The inductive aerodynamic system, according to experts, will operate similarly to the proven electromagnetic installation used in submarines. In the middle of the 1960s, an electromagnetic submarine was built and tested at the University of California, Santa Barbara, utilizing the principle of natural electrical conductivity of salt water. The first successful test of the electromagnetic engine took place in 1966, when a new submarine was demonstrated, moving underwater using electromagnetic force and having no moving parts. The principle of operation is that seawater has high electrical conductivity. This allows overcoming the resistance of water according to Newton's law, which contradicts elementary physics. The question is whether NPOs can harness the natural forces of the oceans to achieve supersonic speeds. Water, as it turns out, is an excellent magnetic conductor. If NPOs apply a process known as diamagnetism, which is a weak repelling force, then in water, this force is significantly amplified, explaining their rapid underwater speed. One scientist hypothesized that NPOs could swiftly move underwater, avoiding damage thanks to a principle that operates in a regular light bulb. In this case, the NPO acts as the filament, and the light bulb serves as the field protecting the object from water. This allows the NPO to pass through water without touching it, creating what is known as a supercavitational bubble around itself. Thus, the object moves along with the bubble of water vapor. Marco Prinsenwak, a lecturer at the Mechanical Engineering faculty of the University of California, conducted an experiment for the History Channel, demonstrating the possibility of achieving supersonic speed underwater. He noted that primarily, one can only experiment with the shape of the apparatus, deviating from the standard outlines of submarines. As part of the experiment, Prinsenwak and his team artificially created underwater currents using green paint and powerful lasers around various objects. If the shape of the body is streamlined, it moves effortlessly underwater. While the cubic shape creates powerful resistance, the shape suitable for underwater supercavitation may resemble the return capsule Soyuz or another spacecraft. However, the laws of physics underwater are radically different from those on land. To propel an ocean vessel at supersonic speed requires much more energy than humanity can currently provide. For example, to have a disk with a diameter of 1.5 meters fly through the air at the speed of sound, an engine with a power of 15,000 horsepower is needed. For a similar apparatus moving underwater at the same speed, the engine must produce around 1 million horsepower. Although the scientific possibility of achieving supersonic speed underwater exists, it remains a question of how extraterrestrial organizations have managed to solve this complex technological challenge. Perhaps we are not meant to fully understand the numerous mysteries of extraterrestrial organizations, which causes heated debates and frustrations among researchers. One of them remarked, "I think it is easier to send an astronaut to the moon and even establish a base there than to lower a human being to the bottom of the ocean." He also added that if extraterrestrial organizations were hostile, they could have conquered Earth 1,000,000 years ago. Perhaps we are their creation, or maybe we work for them, who knows, maybe this is their planet.